republic for which it stands. Thank you. Jamie, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Jeff Capel,
Here.
Councilwoman Jill Cole,
Here.
Councilman Lee Zerwanka, serving as vice mayor,
Here.
Councilman Brian Gath,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pramod Javeri, Councilwoman Katie Schneider,
Here.
Mayor Mark Cirkin, 5 present.
Thank you.
Move
Do I have a motion to excuse PJ and Mark?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of tonight's agenda?
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of November 10th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we also have the budget study session of November 28th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Communications to the council. Anything, Jamie?
There are none tonight, Your Honor.
Okay. Mayor's report will be for November 2022 will be made part of tonight's meeting minutes. Financial report. Do I have a motion to accept the report for November 2022?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Hearings from citizens. If you wish to speak, please approach the microphone, state your name and address. If you have any materials to pass out, please give them directly to the clerk of council. Please keep your comments as brief as possible to allow others a chance to be heard. Hearings from citizens is for us to listen to you and your neighbors. It is very unlikely that we will make any remarks immediately after you speak. We need to have a chance to reflect on your comments, research the subject, consider city codes and legal issues. Sometimes during miscellaneous business, we do revisit an issue brought forward. The clerk of council will notify you when 3 minutes has passed, and at that point, please wrap up your presentation. Most importantly, let's treat each other calmly and with respect. Steve?
Thank you. My name's Steve Armsey, 9791 Troon Court, Blue Ash. I apologize ahead of time. My eyes are so dilated, I can barely see anybody, so I had to make a crib sheet here. I want to start off with just a little story. I went to my annual medical checkup in December of 2014, and one thing led to another. Before January was over, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Thanks to a great medical team at the urology group and my wife, Linda, by my side, we did all the due diligence over several months and elected to move forward with surgery in April of 2015. Fast forward to today, I'm happy to say I'm 7 years clear at this point in time. Now, not that you're interested in my personal medical history, but there's a point to this. It's to drive home the point to men in general about anything, whether it's prostate cancer or health. Men are, I can say I'm an expert at this. We are terrible about taking care of ourselves. We have a lot to learn from our wives, girlfriends, daughters, other women in our lives about how they take care of themselves. Men do not do that. I learned it the hard way. Men in particular need to be focused on their annual PSA test when you get to a certain age with your doctor. If I hadn't done it, I'd probably be standing here maybe today alive, maybe not, maybe have prostate cancer out of control, wouldn't know it. So these are important things in men's health issues. We just need to do better. This is going to be hard to believe, but breast cancer and prostate cancer annually have about the same number of diagnoses and the same number of deaths. Now, if you look at what women's health has been able to do with breast cancer, the number that they would have at this point in time would be significantly greater than that. So I hope we take this as an example in the men's world to do better. This brings me to this question for you. Why do you see men in November putting fuzzy things on their face? That's an attempt to bring attention to men's health, plain and simple. It's called No Shave November. And it's to promote health awareness. And I remembered that. And it seemed to me that I remembered seeing Chief over there with a beard a couple years ago, and that chief over there, that chief, the fire chief. And I remembered a beard, and I think I remembered the fire marshal with a beard. And I know firefighters can't. So I ran into the chief one day and I said, I think you do this, and I think you have a charity that you usually try to raise some funds for. He said, yes. I said, I'd like to promote prostate cancer. We teamed up, and to fast forward, long story short, between the fire department's efforts and me through my business connections and so forth, we raised $4,700 in less than a month. We were the only fire department in the list of first responders in the country. It was a fire department. All the others were police departments. And we were number 2 in the country. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of my friends at the City of Blue Ash. Very proud to have been able to connect with, the chief and his firefighting crew over there to do this. This is a very important cause to me. I'm very active with what's called Zero Cancer, which is the nonprofit that does this. Just wanted to share that with you and thank the City of Blue Ash for being so supportive for us.
Thank you for helping out. Anyone else? Being none, we're going to move on to committee reports, finance and administration, myself. Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-64 by title only.
Resolution adopting the budget for revenues and expenditures of the City of Blue Ash, Ohio for the 2023 fiscal year.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-64.
Second.
Any discussion?
Couple questions I'll have. So past few months, we have discussed the tennis courts and pool issue, and I'm glad I feel like we've made progress on that. And in the budget here on page 11, it does mention we're going to have $140,000 for tennis court repairs. My first question on that is just want to figure out what type of the repairs are. 'Cause when I met with Brian and Dan a few months ago, they kind of mentioned there's been the traditional type of repairs, which are more like patch jobs. They last a year or two. But then there's like a more up-to-date, newer type of repair where it lasts like years at a time. And so first question is just which of those two type of repairs are we envisioning for the tennis courts out of this budget?
It's a fiber that gets laid and then a painting on top of that.
I mean, is it the type that lasts kind of the short time or more the long time?
A little bit longer.
Okay, great. So then, since if the repairs we're doing there are going to then last us a while, then is it the plan in the budget more than just kind of the generic, hey, we're 2 or 3 years away? Is it like definitely the plan now then to say that once those repairs are going to end their useful life, that we're going to already be at work in doing the new tennis court at the end of that?
I'm sorry, what do you ask? Are we going to build new tennis courts in a couple of years? Is that what you're asking?
More or less, that's kind of what I'm getting to. It's just what I'm really getting at is just then, since we are approving some money here for needed repairs, it's a great thing. Then are we taking the step as well to say that then once these repairs will have seen their better days, that we're going to be ready at that point to do the new tennis courts at that point?
Well, I think what we've communicated several times, the tennis courts may even be done before the useful life of these repairs.
Right. Yeah, and just the reason I asked that is just because I know a lot of residents have contacted us on that. And there is definitely a communications difference in us just if we just said, oh, it's 2 years away. But the residents will be like, yeah, we've heard that before. But I think if we can more clearly communicate that, okay, we're doing repairs now, and at the end, that's definitely going to be when things are done. you know, I think it's not just good planning, but something that the residents who've contacted us on this, I think will be appreciative of. So that
I
was-
think it's been made very clear to staff by all of council members that that's a project they support and they're looking forward to doing the pool and the tennis courts in a couple of years.
Great. That's excellent news. Then my other question is related to the golf course. Normally, over the past 5 years, we've been doing a very good job of making sure each year we evaluate golf fees and then bring them up with what standards should be. We know inflation has been running quite high lately, so I'm kind of curious as to why we don't have any companion legislation that deals with golf course fees.
Brian, you want to?
Yeah, 4 of the last 5 years, we've increased fees at the golf course. We didn't feel like it was, after doing our study, we benchmarked with about 11 or 12 courses in the area. And if you go back probably about 6 or 7 years, we were always in the middle of that pack. And that's where we kind of felt comfortable in the market. In the past 4 or 5 years, we've actually started leading it with public courses. Still think it's valued by the product that we put out, but we didn't see it as necessary this year based on the benchmarks that we put together. We didn't see the same response for some of the other courses last year in terms of catching up, but we've had a lot of communication with a couple of the ones that we watch really closely that they're probably going to be doing that. So at this point in time, we just didn't feel like it was validated for this year. However, we're very likely probably going to approach this year our best or our second best year for total rounds. And there's a very good possibility if we have a good December, you're probably looking at the most revenue made off of golf greens fees ever at the golf course.
And I think we need to give that another look between inflation running as high as it is, and also when you look at city publications and maybe even some outside reviews, our golf course is seen as higher quality, not middle of the pack. So for the same reason that, you know, an Anheuser-Busch has pricing power over its premium beers, we've got pricing power here, and we know the costs are going to rise. I have to say I'd have a different opinion as to whether there should be any increases at the golf course.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Brian, didn't I hear that actually the golf course is broken even this year? In fact, not running at a deficit, that it's paid for itself?
Barry?
So, I mean, based on your previous arguments, Mr. Capel, we should be perhaps lowering our fees.
Well, yeah, the better we can do, then great. So when you look at the budgets here, we're as much as it's broken down on page 5, total revenues from Cooper Creek and the golf course is 3.5 million. Total expenses 4.2 million. And then there's a $4 million golf course maintenance facility that we're funding in yet a separate fund that's in there as well. So, you know, broken even, it's what standard are you using? It doesn't look like it's truly breaking even by cash in and cash out.
Other comments? David? Brian? No?
Yeah, there's to just restate, there's no objection on our part. We've risen golf course fees a number of times. It's not a point of contention. I think they just felt like when they do a comparative analysis of what else is out there, it's just, oh, didn't look like we were due. That doesn't mean we can't change it later this year or something like that. So happy
Yeah.
to continue looking at that.
One other thing too is just the general timing of it. Having increased fees 4 out of the last 5 years, more increases than we had in the first 20 years, 20 or 30 years. So we didn't feel like it was good timing.
Those are my 2 big items.
Okay. Anybody else? Done. Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-65 by title only.
Authorizing the 2023 position classification plan and the 2023 pay plan and amending resolution 2017-63 administrative rules and regulations.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-65.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka?
Yes.
5 yeses.
Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-66 by title only.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a multi-year collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police Ohio Labor Council, Inc., the Police Patrol Officers Bargaining Unit.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-66.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilman Capell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Gath?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka?
Yes.
5 yeses.
Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-67 by title only.
Providing for amendments within the 2022 annual appropriation resolution number 2021-64.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-67.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Cole?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Gath?
Yes.
Councilman Capell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka?
Yes.
5 yeses.
Good. Okay, we take care of that. We're moving on to Parks and Recreation Committee, Katie Schneider.
Amy, could you please read resolution number 2022-68 by title only?
Providing for the appointment of Ashley Marinich to the Recreation Board of the City of Blue Ash, Ohio.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-68.
Second.
This is, as you said, appointing Ashley Marinick to the Recreation Board. She was unable to make it this evening to be sworn in. So she'll be sworn in January. And she did attend our last rec board meeting. So we got to hear the latest update and meet everybody.
I think she'll do a great job, frankly.
Any discussion?
Just we appreciate her being willing to step up and serve.
Ashley's awesome.
Yeah, I spoke with her briefly. I think she'll do a great job.
Amy, could you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Gath?
Yes.
Councilman Capell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka?
Yes.
5 yeses.
All right, we'll move on to Planning and Zoning Committee, Jill Cole.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a motion setting a public hearing for Thursday, January 12th, 2023 at 7:05 PM to consider an application for a conditional use permit for a fuel station with 7 pumps at 11220 Reed Hartman Highway in the Blue Ash North District. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I think everybody's going to go, yeah, after that one. Yeah.
I think so too. I just wish it were closer to my house, actually. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We have another motion setting a public hearing for Thursday, January 12th, 2023 at 7:10 PM for consideration of a concept development plan and for a planned unit development at 10477 to 10609 Kenwood Road. Have a second?
Second?
Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Next, Public Works Committee, Jill, again.
Again. Jamie, would you please read resolution number 2022-69 by title only?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a multi-year professional services contract with Blue Ash-based CT Consultants, Inc. for general engineering services for the city.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-69.
Second.
This is a pretty straightforward resolution. We are required by charter to revisit these contracts every 5 years. We've worked with CT consultants for quite some time, and we're very happy with that and looking forward to working with them again. Any other comments or questions?
I'm curious, and I didn't go back to look it up, how these prices have changed over the last year in general, or?
Yeah, so we revisit with the consultants every year based on various issues. So about every year, they revisit their fees to make sure that they're in line with their competitors. So we check them every year.
And you found that they're in line with other firms in the area?
Yeah, we bid out multiple contracts for different engineering firms, like for our roundabout project and so forth. So we compare those rates with the rates that we use for our city engineer. And they're comparable.
Questions or comments? Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Thank you. Jamie, could you please read resolution number 2022-70 by title only?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the Blue Ash Bridge paint project for the unit prices as shown on the attached bid summary.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-70.
Second.
This is a pretty exciting project, and actually, I was really excited to talk to Gordon about it today. There's going to be some decorative paint applications on the columns in the bridge, and I think it's just going to really make our southern entrance to the city look really beautiful and exciting and engaging. So if anyone wants to see the pictures he sent me, I'll be happy to forward them on.
This is the cross-county overpass.
Right.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I know we've been talking about the Gateway project for probably since before I came on council. So I'm excited to see it moving forward. The only, I guess, comment I'll add is that hopefully in the future, there's some extra funding to extend the Gateway project to Blue Ash Road. But this is really exciting. I'm happy this is happening under the bridge.
Any other questions, comments? Jamie, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. Could you please now read resolution number 2022-71 by title only?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the Blue Ash Bridge electric project for the unit prices as shown on the attached bid summary.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-71.
Second?
This again is more excitement. There will be, after the painting gets applied, there will be lights. And again, it's a really nice pictures that we have that can give us a great idea about how attractive it's going to be. Any questions, comments? Jamie, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I'm done finally.
Okay. Next, we have Public Safety Committee, Jeff Capell.
Yes, Jamie, please read resolution number 2022-72 by title only.
Electing Jeff Capell and David M. Waltz to the Volunteer Firefighters Dependents Fund Board and acknowledging the election of Chris Theaters and Justin Burris to the Volunteer Firefighters Dependents Fund Board for the term expiring January 1st, 2024.
Move that we adopt resolution number 2022-72.
Second.
Chief, did you want to say anything about it?
No, this is just something we do every year and just something that we just have to do just to make sure that we're checking all the boxes. So
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.
Next, we have miscellaneous business. David, what do you have?
I don't have anything substantive. I'm fortunate enough to say it's been a wonderful year in review. We'll work on the annual report after the first year and probably in January, February, we'll highlight some of those, but it's certainly been a great year serving with all of you, and I'm lucky to be the first to say happy holidays moving forward.
Amy? Jump back there to the back. Julie?
Nothing tonight.
How about Gordon?
Yeah, just wanted to quickly say that our project that we're working on at Pepper Mill, we're trying to wrap it up for the winter season. Obviously, with the winter weather approaching, the batch plants are going to shut down for asphalt and so forth. So we're going to wrap it up, get Pepper Mill back open and restripe everything to have it operate through the winter months. And then we'll be back at it in the spring. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, I know you were excited about the Southern Gateway. Next year, just a reminder in the budget will be gateway improvements to the roundabouts at Plainfield and Hunt also. So it'll be some sort of decorative wall and landscaping in the roundabout. So that area, while functionally opening, it'll be more attractive hopefully next year at this time.
Very good. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to share some positive notes about the rec center in terms of usage post-pandemic and in terms of how we're getting back to a little bit of normalcy there. If you've been in the rec center, especially post 5 o'clock on a Monday or Wednesday afternoon, you've noticed that it's really filling up, and usage in the building actually for the month of November was back to 2019 numbers. Memberships are slowly coming back as well too. At this point last year, we were at about 69% of where we were with total membership sold in 2019. We're right now about 85%. And our residents are leading that charge. 92% of our residents are back in the rec center utilizing the space. So we're excited to see that, a little bit of normalcy and get people back in the building. I'm sure as soon as we get to January, February, all the New Year's resolutions will pack it in really good. It's always a good time of the year. And happy holidays to everybody. Appreciate everybody's effort. Another great year here in Blue Ash. Thank you.
Chief?
I'll just comment very quickly. Again, Steve, thank you for coming out and talking about the No Shave November. It's something we have done the last few years. And, really, when you look at what we accomplished, being second in the nation, I think we're just getting started. That's one thing Steve and I talked about was we're going to really hit it early next year and then hopefully get a lot more involvement, not only from our city, but our community and be able to make an impact to help reduce prostate cancer for men. And, I will also just say a thank you to the police department. They were a huge, assistance with us with raising money for this endeavor too. So I wanted to say thanks to Chief for that too. That's all tonight.
Thank you. Brian?
A couple things, Mayor. First of all, I would like to echo David and wish everybody a happy holiday season and an enjoyable time and a happy new year as well. Second thing I'd like to say is I'm honored again to serve another year as solicitor. I greatly value being able to represent the city. It's an honor for me personally. It's also an honor for the law firm. We've been doing it for, I don't know, over 50, 60 years. So I'm honored to continue that relationship and hope to do it as long as I practice law. So thank you to council. The third thing I'd like to say is, I don't know, in 2024, maybe that fire board team of Waltz and Capel could be a winning ticket in some election. So just my first endorsement on that ticket. I'm catching that some people didn't think I was serious about that, but
Yeah.
anyway, let me end on a higher note. Thank you all for being able to serve you. If that was my last comment in council, it was not a bad one. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Chief? Sherry? Kelly?
Yes, Vice Mayor Zerwanka. It's fun to say. So this might be the last city council meeting of the year, but we have another council meeting on December 19th. That is the CRA Housing Review Council at 5 p.m. in the Blue Ash Conference Room. I don't normally mention it, but since it's been a topic of conversation as of late, I wanted to make council aware. You're welcome to attend if interested. And Katie and Lee will be there because they serve on the board. That's
So
all.
it's December 19th.
Monday, December 19th, 5
time?
p.m. Blue Ash Conference Room.
Very good. Next.
Yeah, well,
Jeff?
first, I'm going to let a lot of people down by saying that I am not a candidate for anything in 2024 or 2023. So sorry. And then just the other thing I wanted to mention regarding some legislation I had previously submitted, though, was going to end up not being introduced formally tonight. There were some changes made from before, just after consulting with our solicitor. We needed to make some changes to clean it up a bit. So it's just regarding a $100 economic development stimulus grant that would go to all full year 2022 Blue Ash residents. Now, I had submitted that quite a while ago, but both before November and then the revised copy a number of days ago before this meeting, with the expectation that it would be on the agenda, in the packet, on the website to be considered for the meeting. Yet it was not on any of those. It was simply thrown in the packet at the end with a note. So if a resident was trying to track what was going to be discussed at the meeting, they never would have been able to see this because it's being treated like second-class legislation as opposed to the other 9 pieces of legislation that are on the agenda. As council members, we have every right to introduce legislation, and the requirements to do so are listed in our code. It's in section 111.03 and 111.07, one of which states that it must be submitted 48 hours in advance to the clerk to be put on the agenda. And then the other item states that ordinances and resolutions shall not be entered on the agenda nor introduced by any member of council without having first been submitted to the solicitor for approval as to form. Those are our 2 requirements to have our legislation on here and considered. And I met both of those requirements with more than enough time to spare. So for the reasons that it did not get any advance notice, I'm not going to introduce it here, but I do expect for the next meeting that this is on the agenda, on the website, treated like every other piece of legislation, and that going forward, any ideas that we have should not be treated as second-class pieces of legislation and should be thrown in the same basket as every other piece of legislation that we're going to consider.
So just to clarify, from a staff perspective, just like Katie asked a few months ago to review CRA legislation, we still haven't submitted anything to you because you're still working and massaging. So this is something until we get a second or at least a nod from the rest of council that we want us to work on the details. So the form of that, whether it's approvable or not, I don't know. But the way this typically works with a consensus council is, hey, do you have interest in us continuing to research and advance this more? And if there isn't any, then we wouldn't spend any more time. So in my opinion, much similar to what we did with Katie asked, can we look at CRA? We've looked at it 3 or 4 times. We're still revising it. So I consider this very much something that you're still revising. It's not a final form. If council tonight wants to pass a motion saying, please, we're ready for the final form of it and we want it for adoption, then I would suggest you ask for a motion and we will definitely make sure we put it on the next council. You can also, at the beginning of the meeting, when you accept the agenda, you can always move to accept it to the agenda, and then in a miscellaneous, you can ask to put it there for next meeting. But from our perspective, we wouldn't throw things on there that we know hasn't been kind of vetted through with you. Otherwise, it just kind of, it just doesn't work that way with council. You typically want to say, well, let's think about this. And like I said, use the CRA example. We've spent the last 3 months revisiting different drafts and you're still not ready for it. So I think that's very much what this is if this is going to be a draft moving forward, probably want to get council's direction to admin and the solicitor to really start vetting it more detail. And then from there, start talking about the pros and cons of things.
Okay, but you weren't asked to work on this. I wrote the legislation. The rules are in our code, and you do not have veto power over what council members want to submit if we are following the rules.
Well, just to be clear from my perspective, I don't have veto power over anything either, but I'll simply say that when I get given legislation, my job is not to pass or not pass on its efficacy. My job is simply to pass on whether I think it's approved as to form, and whether or not that controls how the agenda. That's never been the practice, at least in my 25 years, 26 now. And so that's fine, but keep in mind too, that we have to write legislation that has to be workable too. And the one thing that I'm still concerned about with respect to this legislation is you and I talked about, Jeff, which I appreciate our conversation on this. It was very open and direct, and I appreciate that conversation. I'm concerned about the workability of this. Forget the lawfulness of it. I'm concerned about how the tax office is going to figure out who's been a resident for 2022 for a year. So that's if we're going to talk about the legislation, I'm happy to talk about the legislation, but I also have concerns about the workability, and Ms. Poppy and I haven't even discussed how that's going to work, or the city manager. So without even getting into those issues, I have that's something that it needs to be workable. That's all. And so I think, again, you and I had great discussions on this, so I appreciate those discussions. You and I talked about some things that I had concerns about, which you addressed, which I appreciate. That's also my concern. If we're going to talk about the legislation, that's all I wanted to voice. And I also wanted to voice too, that from a perspective of the agenda, it is my view, my legal view of the ordinances in the charter, that Mr. Waltz has it correct in that you have the opportunity as a council member to put it on the agenda yourself, and also at least two opportunities. One, at the beginning of the meeting, and two, right now when you're bringing it up as well. So my view of that is that I think that the code is being complied with. I don't think anybody has a veto power over that. And I sure as heck don't. I mean, arguably, if I read the code correctly and interpreted it that way, no legislation would get passed until I said it was approved to a form. And let me tell you what, even if I have that authority under the code, I'm not going to authorize it because I'm not elected to do anything. So Mr. Waltz, I think, has it correct. I would never invoke that. Somebody asked me what I think of the legislation. I'll tell them what I think of them legally, and we'll look at the form. But I'm not going to invoke what I think is a strict interpretation of the ordinance, which says nothing gets on the agenda unless I approve it. And I don't think anybody on council would want that anyway. And it's never operated that way 26 years either, just to give my perspective. But again, you and I had great conversations on this legislation. I appreciate that you addressed what we talked about. So thank you for that. But I just wanted to clarify my views on that.
Yeah, and I back you on that, I appreciate your input as well. I thought it was a productive conversation, and it
was very
made
productive.
Clear
Thank you.
improvements to the legislation. But that's the substance of the legislation that I guess I'm just a little shocked to hear you essentially state that council members have second-class rights to introduce legislation at our own council meeting.
Yeah,
That's pretty shocking to hear.
no, but Jeff, with all due respect, I think I said just the opposite. I think I said that you control whether you want to set the agenda, and it is at the beginning of the agenda, as Mr. Waltz pointed out, or in this particular session right now. So no, you don't have second-class citizen rights. In fact, what I said specifically is if I wanted to interpret the ordinance by its very letter, nothing gets on the agenda unless I approve it. So I would say I would be king and poobah of what gets on the legislation, and it's never going to happen that way. And I would never interpret it that way.
Okay, what would be the legal authority that states that the 9 pieces of legislation that were on the agenda in advance and on the website in advance can go there, but something introduced by a council member does not have that same right? What's the legal argument behind that?
So the legal argument is every one of these things that have been on here, the budget, the pay plan, the collective bargaining agreement, the amendments to the appropriation, the bids, and the multi-year contract for the engineering services are everything we've passed for how many years now?
Plus, they all came from administration.
Well, but to Mr. Capel, he raises a fair question. Look, the code's written, the code's written. You're raising a fair question. So it needs to be answered directly. I appreciate the question. Because I've approved to form every one of these ordinances before and resolutions before for however long I've been the solicitor and how long I was the deputy solicitor. The difference is that your piece of legislation was something different that we have not done before. And so that's different. And again, with respect to approved as to form, excuse me, which is the code requirement, or at least that's the code requirement to the letter of the language. I've seen every one of these before in my, not the specific bid, you're right, but those types of legislation, which Kelly and Sherry and department heads write, I've seen those before and I've blessed those before. So those aren't any different. So that's where I would, I don't know if disagree is not the right word. That's where I would clarify.
Doesn't sound like a legal argument, though. Every PUD, for example, is radically different than every PUD that's come before it. But all PUDs go right on the agenda without any controversy, without any discussion about it. It's just now if a council member introduces legislation at a council meeting, then man, we got problems here. I'm not hearing, I'm not getting what the legal arguments here are.
One sec, David. On the legal argument, again, I would simply disagree with you that these have been approved as to form and they are consistent with 25, 26 years of practice of my doing this. But if we have a reasonable disagreement, then we do. The other thing too is I'll go back to the golf cart ordinance. We talked about that for a number of times. Mayor Serkin wanted that on the agenda. That didn't get put on the agenda until the rest of council said, yeah, go ahead and forward with it. So the recent precedent has been not to interpret that way. And I am governed by that precedent. I think that also was what Mr. Waltz is kind of articulating. And again, I will go back to, if we want a strict interpretation of the ordinance, nothing gets on that agenda unless I approve it. Period. That means any piece of legislation. Think about the implications of that. And we're not going there. But that's the legal effect of what that ordinance says.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say to where I can't criticize you on is that the wording of the code here is definitely an issue. We've talked about it
I agree
before.
with- I agree.
We both would certainly clean up that code a whole lot better than it is now. But, well, I mean, we don't need to go back and forth at it. I'm just going to close by saying I haven't heard legal arguments as to why an actual piece of legislation that has already been written by a council member gets treated differently than every other piece of legislation that's been submitted for the agenda. And that, perhaps one of the reasons I ran for a council a number of years ago is just this attitude about how council members essentially shouldn't be introducing legislation, even though we're council members and working on legislation is what we do. I just think the whole attitude needs to change.
Jeff,
Just from an admin standpoint, be very clear. Our goal is to make sure council is unified in their policy direction. So any member wants to bring up an idea, we're sitting back here waiting for you to give us direction. So all you need to do, very clear, if you're confused, is just literally what Katie did a few months ago. Make a motion, there's a discussion, and council nods and said, yes, start working on it. If you want to draft your own, that's fine. But at some point in time, you still need to get discussion and consensus among council. We're just not going to invest time and energy on anything until there's consensus and discussion. That would just be totally unfair for admin to try to guess where we're going. It's a consensus-based council. You got to at least get 4.
If the legislation is already written, admin is not being asked to draft the legislation. It's simply being put on the agenda, and then council takes the substance over from there. And if council wants to say your substance stinks, we're voting against it, then so be it. That's what happens. But this is just the issue of a council member being able to introduce legislation at their own stinking council meeting.
And I'll just say, you can do that right now.
Do it. Go ahead.
Okay, but it should be on the agenda. It should be advertised in
Well, make
advance
a
along
motion
with
to put
everything
it on the
else.
agenda
Do
for
it.
January.
Do it now.
Great, then put it, yes. So when
Make a
the
motion.
stuff comes out in January,
Jeff,
put it on the
They
agenda,
just
put it on the
said you
website.
can do it right now.
And I've already explained the issues there.
Well, go on ahead and do it and see if you get the support to have it added to the agenda.
So essentially, you're saying I should right now ask for permission to have it on the agenda at the next
No,
meeting.
we're saying make the motion,
The motion for what?
whatever it is you have.
Or to add something to an agenda of a future meeting.
Right, well, that's what we've been talking about here. That's why I submitted all this stuff in advance, so it could be on the agenda and on the website so people can view it in advance of the meeting. That's what I'm talking about here.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm not saying you all have to pass what I write. You can vote against it if you want.
I'm new. It's only been a year. I know that at the beginning of every meeting, we adopt an agenda for our meeting. Before we adopt the agenda, it's a suggestion by the administration. And once that suggestion is made, we can take it and do whatever we want to with it. Is that right? I don't.
That's
You
correct.
could, yes,
And
we
so-
could amend the agenda, yeah.
And so if I wanted to make a motion to include discussion of turning on all the lights in council for the January, I could make that motion and it would show up on the printed agenda ahead of time because we'd already ordered it. Okay, thank you.
So I think the way most of this works, almost actually all of it, is that when we council do introduce legislation, it's rarely ever on the agenda to get from the beginning. Somebody introduces it. We rarely ever pass it right that evening because people want an opportunity to think about it, discuss it. As we discuss it, questions come up. That gives us more to think about. Then it may go on the agenda for the next meeting for us to vote on it. But I think the first time you introduce it, that's what council does when we introduce things is during miscellaneous business, or like they're saying, I don't think we do that very often at the beginning to add it to the agenda, but that would be my suggestion to move us along, is that if you introduce this evening, we discuss it. We have, if there's changes or whatever, you get it on the agenda for the next meeting to vote.
Any other comments?
No, that's all for me. Thanks.
Bill?
Well, let's have a start over. No, I would just first want to say, Brian, this has been a while ago that you said that, but we're glad that you work with us too. Also, I guess just recognizing that we're into December and we haven't had much bad weather, and probably before long, our public works folks are going to be spending lots of hours. Maybe not. Maybe we'll be lucky. I know we own a commercial building. We're hoping that there's no snow removal the rest of the year, till the end of the year at least, but looking forward to that. And I know that the police are also involved in helping make sure what the conditions of the roads are. So just appreciation in advance. And just echo happy holidays, happy and safe, experiences with your family, and a happy and wonderful new year.
Katie?
We have a couple of items. So number one is with the video cameras. We've had that now for over a year, 2 years. We've had that for a while, and I've heard some comments from residents about, they log on, they watch it, the audio's gotten better, they can hear it, but just one piece of advice to make it better, if there's a way, is that, the camera sits right here when there's presentations and people are up here in the front. Folks can't see it and can't hear it very well. So that's one thing, if we can work on improving over the next few months or year, it would make it better. I think, in the beginning, we didn't think very many people were really going to watch our meetings. And to my surprise, I've heard from more people than I ever thought would be watching it. It's still not hundreds of people, but for the folks who do watch it, I think it has been really helpful for them to hear and be able to fast forward through things to pieces that interest them. So I wanted to touch on that. And then I know I bring this up often about safety and crosswalks downtown, and just, the comments from people about how they don't feel safe in crosswalks, and, why can't we add the blinker, the flasher to the crosswalk by Monroe? And I know that pedestrians don't necessarily have the right of way, and cars don't have to stop when there's no traffic light there. So I also want to mention that again, that I've been hearing, I think because it's gotten dark now so early that, it's difficult to see. It gets dark, and, on evenings like tonight where it's raining, it's really difficult to see pedestrians sometimes. But I've heard from a couple folks about the crosswalk there on Cooper and Monroe, and people don't stop very often there. And then my third thing is around our rec board meeting this past week. It was very informative. It was our last meeting of the year. So I just wanted to, we heard updates on everything going on. So thanks to Brian and his team. And it was at the golf maintenance building that we know is in the budget for a new building. But it was fascinating to hear all the science behind soil and grass. So that was something really, really interesting. I'd never thought about. I'm not a golfer, and, you drive past the golf course and it looks beautiful, and there is a lot that goes into that. So thank you to the staff over there for maintaining it and doing such a great job and working so hard. And happy holidays, everybody.
Brian?
I'll continue the happy holidays to everyone and the happy new year. Thank you to whoever it is that is responsible for decorating our downtown area. The poles look nice and festive, and I'm just ready for the temperature to drop just a little bit. Rain doesn't make me feel much for December. I look forward to congratulating Ashley Marinich on her joining of our volunteer boards, and a big thanks. Just got a reminder, as her name was added to our list of all of our volunteer boards. As we end the year, there's a long list of citizens who spend their time trying to make our community better, and that's something that we couldn't do without them. So a big thanks to all of them.
All I have is, I want to say thank you to Rachel for our wonderful annual calendar. Everybody's always looking forward to this. It went out this week. Hopefully it's in everybody's mailboxes. great job. That's very nicely done. I want to say thank you for letting me fill in for Mark and PJ. On behalf of Mark and PJ, our administration and our council, great happy holidays to everybody and a very happy new year to everybody. I hope even better in 23. So with that, that's going to end the regular session here of our meeting, and we're going to go into executive session for property acquisition to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. That's the reason. Do I have a
Do you
motion
need a
to go
motion? I'm
into
so moved.
executive session?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This is a
Do we
roll
have to
call.
Roll call. Go ahead.
Councilman Capell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cole,
Yes.
Councilman Gath,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zerwanka,
Yes.
5 yeses.